You left high school. You did the work. You built the skills. You got the credentials, the experience, the track record that the adult world said it was looking for. You left the cafeteria politics and the social hierarchies and the exhausting performance of belonging behind because you were told those things were temporary, a phase, something that maturity and professionalism would eventually replace. Then you walked into your first real organization, and something felt familiar in a way you couldn't quite name. The popular table was still there. It just had a conference room now. The inner circle was still operating. It just had job titles and a calendar you weren't invited to. The person who was loud and well-liked kept moving forward while the person who actually did the work kept being told to be patient. The cafeteria never disappeared. It got a budget, a reporting structure, and just enough corporate language to make the exclusion sound like meritocracy. My name is Zara, and what I'm about to show you is the actual architecture of the system you've been trying to succeed inside. Picture someone, 2 years in, performing well by every metric they can see. The work is solid. Deliverables land on time. The feedback, when it arrives, is positive. By any reasonable accounting, this is a person on an upward track. Then a stretch project gets assigned. High visibility. Senior leadership involved. Exactly the kind of role that moves careers. This person finds out about it through the all-staff announcement, not a conversation, not a consideration, not even a courtesy mention. Just a name and a subject line that wasn't theirs. They ask, carefully, how the selection was made. The answer is vague. Something about fit, about readiness, about the specifics of what the project needed. Nothing that can be argued with, nothing that can be challenged, nothing that maps to any documented criteria anywhere. What they slowly begin to notice, not in a single moment, but across weeks and months of pattern accumulation, is that a different system is operating underneath the official one. Decisions get made before the official meeting. Information moves through channels that don't include them. The people who receive the early access, the informal mentions, the pre-decision conversations, they share something, not a skill set, not a performance record, something else. Something harder to name. The question they are left carrying is this about my work, or is this about something I was never told was part of the evaluation? That is exactly the right question. And the answer is that there are 2 organizations operating in the same building, the official one and the social one. And the social one is the one that actually makes the decisions. There are 4 structural features that reproduce high school social dynamics inside adult organizations. They are not accidents. They are not personality quirks. They are the predictable outputs of systems built in specific ways, and once you can see them, the behavior stops being confusing and starts being legible. Feature number 1. Similarity bias, the engine under everything. Every decision about who gets access, who gets information early, who gets the informal mention. Before the formal announcement, these decisions flow through a filter that most organizations never audit, and almost none acknowledge. The mechanism is similarity bias. Human beings instinctively extend trust to people who feel familiar. Same communication style, same reference points, same background signals, same social frequency. This is not a character flaw, it is a deeply embedded cognitive shortcut that the brain uses to assess safety and reliability quickly in social environments. Inside an organization, that shortcut determines who gets pulled into the pre-meeting conversation where the actual decision forms, who gets the Slack message at 7 in the evening asking for input before the proposal goes up, who gets described, in the rooms they are not in, as a natural fit for the opportunity. The official criteria, experience, performance record, demonstrated competence run through this filter first. And when the filter produces a preference, the official criteria get arranged to explain it afterward. You were not evaluated against the criteria. The criteria were arranged around the decision that had already been made. Feature number 2, the inner circle access as currency. Every workplace has one. The composition varies. Sometimes it forms around a shared history, sometimes around a shared floor, sometimes around the simple fact of shared proximity to someone with decision-making power. The mechanism is always the same: a closed social unit that controls the flow of consequential information, not all information. Specifically, the information that matters: which projects are coming, which roles are about to open, which concerns about a person or a team are being discussed at levels above you. This information travels through the inner circle before it appears in any official channel, and the people who receive it early can position themselves, prepare, and shape outcomes before anyone on the outside knows the situation is in motion. The people outside the circle are not excluded through a single visible act. They are simply not included in the conversations where the actual decisions happen, and since no announcement is made about their exclusion, no formal complaint can be filed against it. The inner circle does not need to attack you. It only needs to move before you know movement is happening. Feature number 3. Social forgiveness. The invisible differential. This is the mechanism that produces the deepest disorientation. It is the reason you have watched people make significant mistakes, miss a deadline, mishandle a client, produce work that is objectively below standard, and face no meaningful consequence. While a single comparable error on your part produced a documented conversation and a period of heightened scrutiny, the mechanism, inside a social unit, mistakes are processed through a filter of assumed competence. When someone in the inner circle makes an error, the group's existing positive picture of that person generates an explanation that preserves the picture. The mistake was circumstantial. The pressure was unusual. The person is still fundamentally reliable. When someone outside the inner circle makes the same error, there is no existing positive picture to protect. The mistake becomes evidence. It confirms the incomplete story that was already forming. It becomes the data point that gets referenced when questions arise about readiness, about reliability, about fit. You and the person inside the inner circle were never being evaluated on the same standard. You were being evaluated against your performance. They were being evaluated against their reputation, and reputation is built inside a room, not in a deliverable. Feature number 4. The belonging tax: what exclusion costs in real time. This is the feature with the most direct impact on daily performance, and it is the one most consistently overlooked in any organizational account of why certain people seem to underperform relative to their apparent capability. Brain imaging research consistently shows that social exclusion activates the same neural pathways as physical pain. Being left out, talked past, overlooked, these are not mild social discomforts. They are processed by the nervous system as a threat. And the nervous system's response to sustained low-grade threat is hypervigilance, a persistent background monitoring of the social environment that consumes cognitive resources that would otherwise be available for focused work. The person who is fully inside the social structure of their organization arrives at their work each morning without that background load. The person who is partially or fully excluded arrives already spending a portion of their available attention on threat monitoring, on reading the room, tracking who is aligned with whom, managing the micro-signals of inclusion and exclusion. Over time, this cognitive tax compounds. The work that the excluded person produces reflects not their actual capability, but their actual capability minus the sustained cost of operating in a socially hostile environment. The performance gap that organizations attribute to individual difference is frequently the productivity cost of systematic exclusion, and the organization never measures it because measuring it would require acknowledging it. Here is what this system does over time that nobody in the organization will ever formally acknowledge. The people who are consistently excluded from the inner circle, who carry the belonging tax, who receive the social forgiveness differential in reverse, who are consistently last to receive consequential information, these people do not simply underperform, they contract. They become more cautious, more self-monitoring, less likely to surface the ideas that would have built their visibility. They begin to produce a smaller version of their actual capability, and the organization reads that smaller version as confirmation that the exclusion was appropriate. The cycle is self-sealing. The exclusion produces the evidence that justifies the exclusion. And then something else happens. The people who are most affected, the ones who have absorbed the full cost of the dynamic, eventually leave. Not loudly. Not with a formal complaint that produces a paper trail, just quietly, with a careful resignation letter and a vague reference to seeking new challenges. The organization records a turnover. No one audits the cause. The inner circle remains intact, and fills the vacancy with someone who already feels familiar. The high school cafeteria did not produce this outcome by accident. It produced it because the structure that allows it to operate was never designed to correct itself, and the people positioned to change it are the people the structure was built to benefit. The reframe is this: stop trying to succeed inside a system you have been misreading. You were operating as if performance was the primary input into every consequential outcome. It is not. Social positioning is. And social positioning follows different rules than performance does. This is not a reason to become someone you're not. It is a reason to understand the actual game clearly enough to play it deliberately rather than accidentally. Here is what deliberate looks like in 3 concrete moves. Move number 1. Map the pre-meeting and find a legitimate way inside it. Identify the person or people in your organization who consistently receive consequential information before it reaches official channels. Observe who is present in the informal conversations that happen before the formal ones. Then find a legitimate, work-grounded reason to be in proximity to those conversations. A cross-functional project, a relevant contribution to something they are working on, a question that creates a genuine exchange rather than a transactional one. You are not infiltrating. You are ensuring that the people who shape decisions have direct experience of your thinking before those decisions are made. The goal is to exist in their awareness as a capable, present person, not as a name on an org chart they process from a distance. Move number 2. Build one authentic ally inside the structure this month. Not a sponsor, not a mentor in the formal sense. One person who operates inside the social layer that currently excludes you, and who has genuine, direct experience of your work. One person who, when your name comes up in a room you're not in, has their own data to contribute to the narrative. Find that person through work, not through social performance. Solve a problem they care about. Contribute to something they are responsible for. Create an experience of your capability that is specific and memorable enough that their endorsement, if it comes, is grounded in something real rather than general goodwill. Move number 3. Stop competing on volume, compete on positioning. The instinct when you feel excluded is to produce more work, more output, more evidence that the exclusion is unwarranted. That instinct is understandable. It is also largely ineffective. The people inside the social structure are not evaluating you on volume. They are evaluating you on fit, on whether you read as someone who belongs in the next room. Fit is not built through additional deliverables. It is built through presence, through the quality of your contributions in visible moments, through the deliberate cultivation of your positioning in the informal conversations where the actual story about who you are gets constructed. Redirect a portion of the energy currently going into output and invest it in presence, in the meeting, in the conversation, in the exchange that happens after the formal agenda ends. That is where your story is being written. Show up to write it. You cannot outperform social architecture, but you can learn to navigate it without becoming it. There is something worth sitting with at the end of this. The social dynamics you have been navigating at work are not a deviation from professionalism. They are the actual operating system of most organizations built by human beings, run by human beings, reproducing the same patterns that human beings have always produced when they form hierarchies without examining the assumptions underneath them. That is not a reason to despair. It is a reason to stop being surprised. The confusion, the self-doubt, the sense that you were playing by rules that produced inexplicable outcomes, that confusion was not a failure of your perception. It was the predictable result of being given an incomplete account of how the system actually works. You were handed a map that showed the official roads and told the official roads were the only ones. They were never the only ones. The social layer was always operating. The inner circle was always moving. The belonging tax was always being collected. You were simply not told to factor any of it in. Now you know what to factor in. The cafeteria table never disappeared. But knowing it's there changes everything about how you move through the room. That knowledge is yours now. What you do with it is entirely up to you. I'm Zara. I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.